Hi, so today I'm going to be talking about a video that I've been planning and talking about doing for the past couple of weeks, but when I actually started to kind of delve into doing the research for it, I realised that there was just way too much information to condense into one video, and the video would have been literally over an hour long, I think, by the time I discussed every single currency in every single different country in Europe. So I've decided, the thing with Europe is it's hard to kind of define a line, and it's hard to like decide what's Western, what's Central, what's Northern, what's Eastern. So for the purposes of these videos, what I'm going to do is separate Europe into Eastern and then just like the rest. So I'm going to include Western, southern parts of Europe and like Scandinavia and stuff like that. And then on Monday, maybe tomorrow, but probably, no wait, tomorrow is Monday. So yeah, tomorrow I'll be uploading a video that is discussing all the kind of Eastern European and more which I believe to be Central Asian, like Azerbaijan and stuff like that, but on the internet they're like categorised as being in Europe still. So I'm going to try and include everything. So if you're tuning into this video wanting to find out about Eastern European currencies, and for the purposes of this video that's going to be anywhere east of Austria or east of Germany, starting with like Poland and the Czech Republic and so on, then just subscribe or check back to this channel in a couple of days and that video will be up, and I'll be sure to leave a link of it. I'll put a little card up here and I'll put a card in the description. So with all that being said, I'm going to kind of consolidate all these countries together because the majority of them deal with the euro. So like, I'm not sure if you know, but this part of Europe is kind of referred to as the Eurozone. There are a few countries within it, for example the UK where I'm from, Switzerland, and then all of the Scandinavian countries barring Finland have their own variations of the krona, which you'll see kind of follows on into other countries in Eastern Europe as well, but I'll go into that more tomorrow. So I'll try and do this. If you haven't seen, I've done a video like this a few weeks ago on East Asian currencies. So I'm very much going to try and approach this video the same way that I approached that one. I'm going to try my very best to deal with everything geographically, but I'll say it before and I'll say it again, geography is not my strong point, so if I skip a country or get mixed up, then you know why. And then I'm going to go on and talk about my opinions on carrying cash versus cards. I'm going to give 2 recommendations of really good prepaid travel cards that I've used in the past. I'll go into more like further on in the video, but basically what that means, it's just ultimately it's a debit card, but you preload money in your own native currency to use in other countries, and it takes away the kind of middleman fees really. Although the exchange rate is sometimes not as great if you were to actually exchange and physically have the cash. I just am very wary about carrying large quantities of cash on my person, especially in Europe. I feel, although touch wood, nothing like that's ever happened, but I've heard a lot of stories of people being pickpocketed, and I would rather lose a card with a smaller amount of money preloaded onto it than lose a big bundle of cash and then be stuck with nothing to spend any money on. So no money to spend on anything, I should have said there, sorry. So I'm going to start by discussing the different countries in this part of Europe that I'm going to be talking about for the remainder of this video, talking about their relative currencies. I'm going to use the Great British Pound as a kind of benchmark and comparison for what the kind of exchange rate is. Obviously if you're watching this from outside the UK, if you're in the States or New Zealand or Australia or something, it's very easy to just go on and do a Google search and then you can see what the exchange rates are. I will say if you are in the UK, obviously the euro exchange rate right now is just absolutely abysmal, but that being said, the pound is really not doing strong against any currency, to be perfectly honest, unless that country's in the same sort of political climate we're in and they're being negatively affected as well. Everything's going to be more expensive for us, unfortunately, until the current political climate is resolved. We're just going to have to pay more, and I just think that's something that we just need to come to terms with. I mean, we've been dealing with the pound getting weaker and weaker for the past 3 years now, so it's just going to keep getting worse really until everything's resolved. So that's as much as I'm going to talk about Brexit in this video, because it's just not a good idea, I don't think. So let me just start by listing the countries that use the euro. So the euro right now is about €1.11 to every pound, which obviously if you're from the UK, you know 3 years ago we were getting €1.35, €1.40, but that's just the way things go, unfortunately. So geographically speaking, I'm going to start, so obviously Ireland use the euro, Portugal, Spain, France, Germany, Austria, Brussels, Luxembourg, Italy, where else? I've written it down just in case I forget anywhere, you know. Greece, Cyprus and Turkey, which are all kind of underneath Eastern Europe, I would say. The Netherlands, and then Finland is kind of the only Scandinavian country that uses the euro. So that's everywhere, and then that's the exchange rate. Moving up to Scandinavia, you've got Denmark. They use the Danish krona, and that is about 8.32 to the pound. I'll write everything down here just in case you're struggling to understand my accent or just want a screenshot of it instead. And then Norway have the Norwegian krona. That's 10.79 to the pound. And then Sweden have the Swedish krona, which is 11.83 to the pound. And then you have Switzerland, which uses Swiss franc, which is 1.24 to every pound. And that's all the countries I'm going to be kind of talking about in this video. I would just say, if you've never travelled to the continent and you're not sure about what things actually cost in all these different countries, as a general rule of thumb, I personally believe that Central Europe is very similar in price to Scotland. I often find that when people come here to visit, they find Scotland to be pretty expensive, whether that be buying alcohol. I mean, it depends where you are. If you're in like a kind of an old man's pub in the city centre of Glasgow, you're obviously not going to pay the same as if you paid for a pint in like one of the more expensive neighbourhoods in Edinburgh, or say for St Andrews or somewhere like that. I would definitely say the more touristy an area is, the more expensive it is. So if you're wanting to go for dinner near the Eiffel Tower, obviously it's going to be a lot more expensive than if you're 20 minutes outside the centre of Paris. I will just say, I personally believe that Europe can be affordable for everybody. I think there seems to be this kind of idea surrounding Europe that it's really overpriced and things like that, but I just feel like if you're like savvy in the way that you travel around Europe, you can do it on a backpacker's budget. So I'm actually going to leave a few links in the comments below and in the description box below, because I've actually got a whole section of my blog that's dedicated to these kind of travel in Europe on a backpacker budget sort of thing. And obviously you don't have to be a backpacker, and I'm not saying stay in hostels and things like that, even though there's absolutely nothing wrong with staying in hostels, but I just know for a lot of people, especially maybe older people, if they're travelling with their children, they might not want to stay in a hostel. But trust me, you're more than capable of doing it on a budget. I even find that sometimes package holidays to places like Benidorm and stuff, I just feel like, although I love going on holidays like that and I find it so nice to relax, I feel like there's often a misconception where you can't do kind of city breaks because it's a lot more expensive than budget package holidays. And I just, from what I've found in the trips I've been on and what I've spent on respective holidays, I just don't find that to be the case. Obviously if you want to go on like a luxury European trip, then that you're going to be paying like hundreds if not thousands of pounds. But you're definitely able to do it on a budget. I've got 3 posts in particular that I can think of that I've written right now. I've got a post on how to travel the French Riviera on a budget, how to visit the Amalfi Coast, and how to stay in central Italy on a budget. So I'll link that tab in my website below, and you can just have a look at that. I've also got a couple of posts in that category where I'm talking about there's posts specific for Asia and East Asia and specific for Europe. One of them is about European museums, and I'm not sure if you know that, but if you are a resident of a lot of EU countries, we're still EU residents technically right now, so I would definitely read it and take advantage while you can. If you have an EU passport, if you're under a certain age, if you're over a certain age, if you're travelling in a certain group, you can get a lot of concessions. And often if you're someone that's my age, I'm about to be 24, or you're a student, you can get into a lot of places for free, especially museums. And then there's a separate post about European landmarks. So when I'm saying European landmarks, I mean places like Versailles or Schönbrunn Palace, stuff like that. I think all in all in Europe, I think I have probably only ever paid to get into the Uffizi Gallery. Uffizi in Florence and then the Borghese Gallery in Rome, and both of them because one was because I was a student and the other was because I was under 25 and an EU citizen. I got discounts, I got concession prices for both of them. So if you are, even if you already have a trip planned, I would really recommend having a reread of these posts because they're really useful and it's a really good way to get to see more but not have to spend any more money. Or if you do spend money, you're spending less than you would have to normally. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, enough rambling. Oh, and another thing I would just say about if you're from outside Europe and you're planning on making a trip to Europe, I know obviously it's hard, especially for teachers and things like that, because the best time to come is summer. You get incredible weather, but I mean right now on the continent, I say on the continent because we're off in an island in Scotland. Well, you know what I mean, the UK's an island. It's like 40 degrees right now, and I just don't, if you're going to be walking about all day, I feel like it's different if you're on a beach or you're lying by a pool and the weather's like that. But if you're going to be walking about sightseeing, I don't want to be 40 degrees. So that plus this other reason is obviously if you visit in peak times, which I would say is like May to September in Europe, you're going to pay through the roof on hotels, flights, trains around, buses around, whatever you use once you get there. So I would just, that's just another thing to think about. If you're looking to travel on more of a restricted budget, then that's just something else to think about. Okay, so travel cards. So the two travel cards I've used in the past are the post office, that's the British Post Office, and Ramsden's. Now, I tell a lie, I've never used a post office travel card, but I know a lot of people that have, and I've looked really in depth at the brochures. I went actually into a post office and asked for some information, and I've looked online, and from what I can determine, comparing them to other prepaid travel cards, I just definitely feel like these are the best ones to use, not only in Europe, but you can load Great British pounds to them. I think it's to 14 other currencies, so I know the UAE's included, that's Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and the 5 other Emirates or whatever. You can put US dollars on them, Canadian dollars. I seen there was Thai baht was an option, the Croatian currency was an option. So even if you're visiting somewhere that's not Europe, I would definitely think it's worthwhile going on and have a wee look. The reason I'm suggesting prepaid travel cards is, and I know they can be like a little bit controversial, but I like firmly believe in them, first and foremost is because you don't have the international conversion fees. I know when I use my Bank of Scotland card, I get charged a percentage of the amount I spend, and if I'm withdrawing from a cash machine abroad, I get charged a fixed rate fee plus the percentage conversion rate. It ends up being so much money, and then often I find that we're one of the only countries in the world where you can use ATMs for free. I know that like in Indonesia it was like £6 just to use the ATM, plus the withdrawal fee, plus the conversion fee. You can end up spending like £20 just to withdraw your own money at times. So I definitely think prepaid travel cards are great for that. I know that both the post office and Ramsden's, they just have a standard fee of €2. So if you were to withdraw €200 or €20, you would get charged €2 every single time. So obviously if you are going to do that, I would recommend taking out the max amount. I've written it down because I don't want to get this wrong. So with the post office, it's 450 is the maximum withdrawal, and they have a lot of small print conditions that I definitely think it's worth looking into before. Obviously I'm not going to go through every single thing here, but there's things like you can only make a maximum of 3 withdrawals every day, and then it said over 4 days you can only make 12 withdrawals, which is the same thing, so I don't really understand that. But I think the maximum you can withdraw over a few days with the post office was like €650, but then over 4 days it was like $18.50. So although you can withdraw the same amount of times, you can't withdraw as large a sum of cash. But I mean, like, really, where are you going when you need €2,000 in 2 days? Like I don't think anybody needs that. And that's not to say you had to pay like chip and pin. You don't get charged at all for that as long as you pay in euro and you're using a euro card. You're not going to be charged at all for using it. So anytime I have ever used a prepaid travel card, I'm not sure, this is just what I like to do, and I'm not sure if you agree with this or not, but I always travelled with my partner. So now things would maybe be a little bit different and I would have to maybe rethink, but this is just my personal experience, so I'm just going to tell you. We would always keep one card at home, whether it be his bank card or my bank card, and we would always keep the savings on that, in that specific account at home. And then we could just remember our bank details. So every time we uploaded from the card that was at home. And the reason I done this was because the cash was safe. Even if every other single card we had taken with us was stolen, we always had our savings safe and at home. And then that means that if everything does get stolen, you can still wire money from your account at home to like a Western Union or something. I know it happens, and I know you would have to pay commission and stuff like that, but I just feel like that is such a good, like, bulletproof way of making sure that you can never lose all your money at one time, you know. And another tip on what we would do is, so like I said earlier, the post office had a €450 maximum withdrawal. So we would withdraw that, we would pay the €2 fee, and then we would just use that cash, and that would be all we would spend for the next few days. And when we were uploading cash to the card, we would only upload that amount so that there was never any residual cash sitting in the bank, so that if the card did go missing, it was just the card that went missing. We could order a new one, have it posted to our hotel, but we never actually lost any cash from that card. And like I said, if anything went missing. And another tip I'll say is we always ensured that our cards and our cash were kept in separate areas, so that if, God forbid, something did happen, something did get stolen, they would either hopefully have the cash or the card. They wouldn't have both. So if the cash went missing, we could just wire more, and if the card went missing, we had enough money to get us going, or keep us going, until we got replacement cards and things like that. So that's just like a little tip I'll say. Now the last thing I'm going to talk about is if you are travelling with one of these Euro cards outside of the European countries that use the Euro. In hindsight, what I had wished we'd done, because we ended up travelling, we left Italy, we went to Hungary, and then we went to the Czech Republic, Poland and Norway, which was 4 different countries. In hindsight, I wish we had just withdrawn a large amount of cash before we went to Italy over like 3 or 4 days, and just had that cash and then converted that cash as we moved to each different country. Because what ended up happening was we had to keep all the cash on the Euro card because we hadn't withdrawn it, or our bank accounts, but that would have cost even more. And we had to withdraw cash in each of those respective countries and then convert the cash. And it just cost us, I mean, it probably only cost us an extra, I don't know, £30-40, but when you're on a budget, those extra £30 and £40 are crucial. And I know I've just said I don't like carrying a lot of cash, but if it's for a short amount of time and it's not a huge amount of money, I think we probably spent a week outside of like the Eurozone, so we probably only would have had like €500, which is what we were carrying anyway, so it wouldn't have made that big of a difference. Otherwise, you can continue to use Euro cards out with the Eurozone, but you will get charged extra. So what I'll recommend is, if you're paying chip and pin, there's always the option to pay in a local currency, or it would be in euros in this case. You should use euros because you won't be charged any extra. If you're withdrawing, obviously you're going to get charged the standard €2 fee, and then they call it a cross-border fee. So you'll get charged the €2 fee to withdraw, the exchange rated amount in euros, and then a 3% cross-border fee as well. And again, in the grand scheme of things, it won't cost you that much extra. So if you would rather not have that much cash on you, then I would just keep the money on the card. But I would recommend having a prepaid travel card instead of using your bank card, because the charges are just astronomical. Like, truly, if we had used our bank card in those 4 different countries, it could have cost us up to £80 instead of the 20 we spent. But if we'd withdrawn the cash in one of the Eurozone countries in Europe, yeah, we could have lost the money, but it wouldn't have been any different had we lost it at any other point in the trip. but we wouldn't have paid any extra in conversion fees and things like that. So that's just a little food for thought. And the last thing I will say is, like I said in the other video, I would always strongly recommend having a kind of emergency cash pot, whether it be stuffed in a sock inside your suitcase, stuffed in a sock inside your backpack, because you just never know. You just never know. You could leave the bag with everything on a train or something like that. Even if you're a person that likes to use card exclusively, there's sometimes you might have to jump in a taxi or jump on a train. Trains you'd probably be able to use card, but maybe a bus. You just really never know when you're going to need cash. So I would definitely always recommend maybe 50 euros, 100 euros if you are just going to use your card all the time. Because otherwise, obviously, you can pay at restaurants, hotels, you can pay flights, you can pay at major train stations, you can pay with your card. But I would honestly, I just think it's such an important thing to have like an emergency stash of cash that's in a separate area from where you keep the rest of your cash or your cards, because you just never know what could happen, and it's always better to like be prepared, and then often you don't have to use it, and then at the end of the trip you've got an extra 50 or 100 euros in your bag that you forgot you had, and you get to spend it. So maybe on the last night of your holiday you'll get to go for a really nice dinner. I think I've kind of covered everything that I covered in the other video. I'll put a little card up here and I'll refer you to the East Asian one. This particular part of Europe is a little bit easier than the part I'm going to discuss tomorrow, because every single country basically has its own currency. I think there's maybe 4 countries that I'm going to talk about tomorrow that use the euro, but the rest of them are going to use their own currency. So if you have any questions at all, please leave them in the comments below. I'll be more than happy to ask anything. Even if I'm not sure of the answer, I'll always say this, because obviously I don't know everything. I don't know even a quarter of everything about this sort of thing. This is just kind of me sharing my personal experiences, and if they can help anybody or give anybody a little tip or a little trick that they never thought of, then that's kind of the whole point in doing it. And I just want to say I'm I think 5 people away from 100 subscribers, which I feel like for 2 months of making videos is pretty good. So thanks everybody that's taking the time to watch these videos. I know I probably sound pure sappy because I say this every single video, but really do appreciate it. And just thanks for all the amazing feedback. The comments I had on the last video about graduating were really, really lovely. So just thanks everybody, and I'll be uploading the video on Eastern European currencies and Far Eastern currencies as well. When I looked online, it said it was talking about Azerbaijan and countries like that, and to me, is that not in Asia? Is that in Europe? It's not in my perspective, but obviously if it says it online, it must be true. So I think that's me for today. If you could take a wee second to subscribe or give it a like or give it a comment, I'd really appreciate it. And if you have any tips that you think I've missed out, then please just leave them. I can take some constructive criticism. So thanks so much for taking the time to watch, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.